So even if we do a new pack design or a new advertising campaign, that comes and goes. But there are always a few truths with a brand that I think you have to understand and not play about with over time. The first one for Green and Blacks is the fact we're organic. You know, someone once said to me, the undeniable truth about Green and Blacks is it's organic, and work with it rather than be embarrassed by it, because actually it's your biggest asset, and it still is today our biggest asset, but you do just have to work out where it sits in the brand offering, and it never sits over and above the quality and taste of the chocolate. It's our way of doing it, but it isn't the main reason to buy the brand. The main reason to buy the brand is the chocolate tastes so good. Ethical trading. We've done it from the start. We continue to pay the cocoa growers more today. We give them long-term contracts. To be honest, it's something we just think we should be doing. We don't ask for any special credit for doing it. It's our way of building good links with our suppliers and getting the best quality crop that they can produce. And we have some long-term evidence to show how that kind of works. Chocolate is the most important thing. You know, above all else, the taste of the chocolate rules. But also the way we talk about the brand, we try and do it with a slightly tongue-in-cheek point of view. So we say Green and Blacks is not for everybody. So for example, how do we do Easter eggs? We do a dark Easter egg, 70% with little mini eggs that are also dark. Easter's typically about kids and free mugs and chickens and novelty bunnies and everything else. So we ran a campaign saying, disappoint the kids this Easter. So give them a Green and Blacks egg because it's strictly for grown-ups. It's dark and it's... So rather than just taking the brand and being opportunistic and playing to the market, you know, be distinctive, be true to who you are, but try and do it in a way that hopefully raises a smile as well. The ginger bar, which is on the top left, we did a little bit of research on the ginger bar. We asked people what they would like us to be the next Green and Blacks flavour. And ginger came out something like number 29 on a list of possible flavours. We gave people a chance to try it, and it still came out pretty low as in terms of an average score. But when you delve into the results, what you actually found is that those people that expressed a liking for ginger, their scores were just off the charts. Equally, those people that didn't like ginger really didn't like it at all. So it's a very polarising product. But polarising is good for Green and Blacks. We like things that are distinctive and have an edge. And be careful, whenever you read any market research results, the biggest mistake people make is to just look at the sort of mean score, the mean average score. And unless you delve a little bit beneath that, you don't really pick up the nuggets of insight, and ginger's a good example of that. So, as a business, in terms of the way we operate, what are our guiding principles, the things that govern us? I talked earlier about targeting, and I'll talk about it briefly again. It's I think, the most important thing you have to do on any brand before you start spending any marketing money, and unless you get this clear, don't spend any marketing money would be the advice. We tried to say who were our existing customers for Green and Blacks in the early days. We found out that they were people on the far left and the far right of the chart here. So on the far left, people who were adventurous foodies. So they were kind of really into their wine, ate out of the best restaurants, probably cooked a lot themselves, went on independent holidays rather than package holidays. They were kind of free spirit people. And we probably all know someone that we go to when we want advice on food and wine, and they were in that group. And the reason they bought Green and Blacks is because it was dark 70%, and it was a sort of foodie choice. And then on the far right, green cuisine, as we call them, people who were buying Green and Blacks primarily because it was organic. And we actually worked with Tesco, one of our key retailers, to try and quantify how many of these people there were. And we found out when we added those two groups up, they represented about 10% of the total Tesco shopper base. So 10% is a big number. But we wanted to get to an even better number, so that we then said, well, for the offering that we have, rather than abandon our early customers, which we didn't want to do, how could we just extend the appeal of the brand? Who are the next tier of customers that could come into Green and Blacks? And we categorised them as time-poor, food-rich, which is basically busy urban commuters walking around with, you know, paper cups of cappuccino and latte, gym memberships, eat out a lot, high disposable income, like brands, connect with brands, more than anything else. And then everyday luxury, which is an older group, empty nesters typically. Interestingly, generally not cutting edge in food trends, but like to be just slightly there, next behind. So if it's a special occasion, they'll go to M&S for biscuits rather than Sainsbury. They'll have Twinings tea, they'll read the Daily Mail or the Telegraph. That type of group, slightly conservative, but driven by quality and, you know, good choices. The other thing that helps us with this group is, as people get older, their propensity towards dark chocolate increases, because actually people like more bitter flavours rather than things that are too sweet as they get older. So very big correlation between the older groups and consumption of dark chocolate. So we painted these segments, and this is an example of the time poor food rich group. And as you see, what we just tried to do is to just pick a set of brands that we think this audience would identify with, that were part of their lives. So rather than only looking in our own category, we just said, who are these people and what type of things do they do? Which brands do they connect with? And we found that really powerful with our own sales team, who, to be honest, were pretty bored of turning up to their customers with lots of statistics from the marketing department about demographic profiles and everything else, because they would listen to the marketing presentations and nod and say, well, that's all very interesting, and then it'd be a bit kind of embarrassed to show it to their customers because it was all a bit too marketing fluffy. Whereas pictures of brands that people can relate to, and we all know people that fit these segments, we found it a really powerful way of explaining our segmentation visually, such that everybody in our organisation and indeed our customers understood what we were trying to do with the brand. Trading up is an important thing. When the reality of Green and Blacks is it tastes better because it has fine quality organic ingredients, and we take great care in the way we make it. So it does cost more than most chocolate. It costs more to make. Therefore, the marketing job really is to explain to people why it tastes better, and therefore encourage them to pay more for it. I went on a marketing course quite early in my career at Warwick University with a guy called Peter Doyle, who was a great professor of marketing, and he spent the whole morning with this group of brand managers, as we were at a time, saying to us, you've got to go away with your post-it notes and pens, as you do on these kind of breakout things, and you have to come back in 2 hours' time and tell me what you agree to be the definition of marketing, and I want you as a group to agree upon it and then come back. So we all tried to craft the most amazing long sentences to express what we thought marketing was. We got back into the room and came out with all of our different definitions, and he turned the screen off and he basically said, well, thank you for that, but it was complete and utter rubbish. You've just wasted 2 hours. Because he said, it's very simple. The definition of marketing is charging people more for your product. And it's stuck with me ever since. And I thought it's a brilliant way of thinking about what we as marketeers are here to do, whether we have a product or a service. Doesn't mean you can charge any old price for it. Clearly there's a fair price for something. But we seem to spend our lives discounting everything rather than encouraging people to pay more for it. And the only reason people do pay more for something is it's more desirable, or there are more reasons to pay for it. But it's a good test for us as marketeers, I think. You know, how much time do we really think about what our product or service offers? Is it better than the next person's? And if it is, are we communicating that? Or do we assume that people already know that? Because far too often they don't. And if you can get that across, then you can command a premium rather than relying purely on cutting the price all of the time. The second thing that Peter Doyle taught us in the afternoon on this conference, the next question, Rule 102 of marketing, as he called it, was targeting and segmentation. And the question to us was, he was from Warwick University, so we were pretty near to Birmingham International Airport. And he said, you're in charge of pricing for Birmingham Airport, and you've got to set the price for the year 1995 or 6, whatever it was at the time. Gave us this whole deck of statistics about, you know, trends in parking charges and market data. Come back in a couple of hours and tell us what the prices should be next year. You imagine you're presenting to the board of Birmingham Airport. So again, all the groups came back, and some people said, well, it should be £13.50 or £12.95 or £7.50, a whole host of different prices. And yet again, screen went dark, and he said, thank you again for 2 hours of wasted effort, but you're all wrong yet again. And the answer is the right price, or the cost of parking at Birmingham Airport, is entirely dependent on who you are and why you're there. And that's really what marketing and segmentation is about. So if you're going on your annual family holiday, as much as it might annoy you at the time, you probably don't mind driving your family and parking in a field 5 miles away and being bussed in, and you don't mind leaving 4 hours before or something from home to even get to the airport, because you know that actually you're not going to be ripped off and you'll pay a cheaper price for 2 weeks. If you're there on a business trip and you're heading up and down to London for the day, then you might even do valet parking. You may be putting it on expenses, so you may pay more in a day than someone else will pay for 2 weeks parking. So never ever take the average of the average. Always think about different subgroups on what your product or brand offers for them, and therefore